In the coming days, we may just see the end of council tax. Yes, really. But don't leap for joy just yet. Council tax reform, at what cost? That's the question we want to address today. And more specifically, at what cost to those of you relying on the value in your house for your retirement plans? You may be asking, what has council tax reform got to do with retirement planning? Keep watching and we'll explain. You might be surprised with what you're about to hear. Before we dive into the detail, go ahead and gently tap that subscribe button. The UK retirement landscape changes fast. From pensions and tax policy to property market news, Retirement Brief UK tracks and summarises the news impacting your future. Right now, 2.4 million people over 55 are watching the government's council tax plans and quietly changing their retirement decisions. 19% have adopted a wait-and-see approach to downsizing, which sounds cautious and sensible, until you realise what they're actually waiting for. They're waiting to see if the financial math that made downsizing work for their parents' generation is about to be completely rewritten. If you watched our last video on council tax reform, you know the government is looking at ways to raise £4 billion from property owners. What we didn't talk about is the unintended consequence that's already happening. People who should be downsizing, who want to downsize, are now stuck, trapped between outdated tax systems, reform uncertainty, and a housing market that doesn't have what they need. Here's why this matters to your retirement, and what you can do about it before the window closes. For decades, the retirement playbook has been straightforward. You work, you buy the biggest house you can afford while raising kids, you pay off the mortgage, and then, sometime in your late 50s or early 60s, you sell that big family home and move somewhere smaller. The average person downsizing from a 4-bedroom home to a 2-bedroom property unlocks £305,090 in equity. That's £1,218 per month for 20 years, enough to bridge the gap between a modest state pension and actually enjoying retirement. You also reduce your monthly costs. Smaller home means lower heating bills, lower maintenance, less garden to manage. And traditionally, lower council tax because you're moving from a Band F or G property down to a Band D or E. That was the deal. That's what millions of people have been planning around. But here's the problem. The government is about to change the rules, and the new math doesn't work the same way. The serious proposals on the table would replace council tax entirely with something called a proportional property tax. Under this system, you'd pay 0.5% of your home's current market value every single year, not based on 1991 valuations, not based on arbitrary bands, based on what your home is worth right now. Let's do the math on what this means for downsizing. Say you're in a £600,000 4-bedroom house in the southeast. Under the current system, you're probably in Band F, paying around £2,800 per year. You sell and move to a £350,000 2-bedroom flat. Your council tax drops to Band D, maybe £2,000 per year. You've saved £800 annually. Plus you've unlocked roughly £250,000 in equity after costs. Now let's run the same scenario under a 0.5% proportional property tax. Your £600,000 house costs you £3,000 per year. You downsize to that £350,000 flat, and now you're paying £1,750. You've saved £1,250 per year, which sounds better, right? Except here's the trap. Under proportional property tax systems, the rate is regularly adjusted based on current market values. If that £350,000 flat appreciates to £400,000 over 5 years, your annual tax bill rises to £2,000, then £2,250, then more. Meanwhile, you've given up £250,000 in potential appreciation on the larger property. And you've paid stamp duty, moving costs, legal fees, easily £15,000 to £20,000 to make the move. Suddenly, the clear financial win of downsizing becomes more of a gamble. Property experts have warned that reforms might reduce housing market mobility, particularly affecting asset-rich, cash-poor pensioners. Let's be specific about what that actually means. You're 68 years old. You own your home outright. It's worth £800,000. Your pension brings in £18,000 a year. You're comfortable, but not wealthy in terms of monthly income. Now, the government introduces a 0.5% property tax. Overnight, you owe £4,000 per year instead of the £2,400 you were paying in Band G council tax. That's an extra £1,600 annually, coming out of an £18,000 income. You think about selling and downsizing, but everything smaller is still expensive in your area. Your kids live nearby, your GP is local, your friends are here, and you're increasingly aware that moving house at 68 is not the same as moving at 45. The government knows this is a problem, which is why proposals include deferral schemes where asset-rich but cash-poor pensioners could defer payment at a 0.6% rate, building an equity stake that's paid when the property sells. But here's what that really means. You're taking a loan against your house, paying interest at 0.6% just to cover a tax bill. Every year, the debt compounds. That's money your children won't inherit. That's equity you can't access in an emergency. This isn't just a tax increase. It's a forced equity release scheme dressed up as tax reform. There's an emerging trend of early downsizers. People in their 50s downsizing before retirement due to financial pressure. These are people who should be at peak earning years, potentially still with kids at home. They're downsizing not because they want to, but because they can't afford to stay in their family home anymore. Some of that is interest rates, some is cost of living, but a significant part is anticipation of what's coming with property taxes. They're getting ahead of reform by shrinking their housing footprint now before the system changes and locks them in. If you're in your late 50s or early 60s, you're caught in the middle. You're too young to have downsized already, but old enough that the window is closing. And the speculation around council tax reform makes every decision feel like a gamble. Even if you wanted to downsize, there's a practical problem. 38% of over 55s want bungalows, but only 2% of UK housing stock is retirement-focused. More than a third of older adults want single-level living, for mobility, for safety, for practical reasons, and the market can barely provide it. The UK needs 30,000 age-exclusive homes built each year. Last year, only 7,000 were built. That's not a small gap. That's a structural failure. So even if the tax math works, even if you're ready to move, what exactly are you moving into? A retirement flat that costs nearly as much as your family home, a bungalow that doesn't exist. Some people are solving this differently. There's a growing trend of retirees downsizing to rent rather than buy, releasing equity from homes with average gains of £80,000. They're taking the cash, putting it in investments or savings, and renting a smaller place with lower responsibility. That might sound radical, but it's a rational response to an irrational housing market. If property taxes are going to be based on market value going forward, and if suitable retirement housing barely exists to buy, why not rent and preserve your capital? If you're 55 to 65 right now, and you were planning to downsize in the next 5 to 10 years, this should be front of mind in your financial planning. If you wait for clarity on council tax reform, you might wait 2 years, 3 years, maybe longer. Governments move slowly, but in that time, property prices could shift, your personal circumstances could change, and the downsizing market could get more competitive. If you move now, before reform, you're locking in current council tax rates on your new property, but you're also gambling that reform won't make staying in your larger home relatively cheaper. If you wait, you're gambling that reform will favour downsizers, but you're also aging into a period where moving house becomes physically and emotionally harder. There's no perfect answer here, but there is a wrong answer, doing nothing and hoping it sorts itself out. First, model the scenarios properly. Don't guess. Get a realistic valuation on your current home and on the type of property you'd downsize into. Then calculate council tax under 3 scenarios: current system, banded reform like we discussed in the last video, and proportional property tax at 0.5%. Factor in stamp duty, it's significant. Factor in moving costs. Factor in the opportunity cost of liquidating a property that might appreciate further. Second, talk to a financial advisor who specializes in retirement planning, not a mortgage broker, not an estate agent, someone whose job is to look at your entire financial picture and tell you whether downsizing makes sense in your specific situation. Third, if you're serious about moving, start looking at what's actually available now. If the housing you want doesn't exist, that changes your timeline and your strategy entirely. And fourth, this is important, don't let tax speculation paralyze you. Yes, reform is coming. But if downsizing makes sense for your lifestyle, your health, and your family situation, the tax implications are secondary. You cannot plan your entire life around avoiding potential tax changes. The government is redesigning property taxation, while the housing market is simultaneously failing to provide appropriate retirement housing. Those two things together create a trap that's bigger than just council tax. You're being told you should downsize to free up family homes for younger buyers. But the market isn't building the homes you'd downsize into. And the government is considering tax changes that might make downsizing financially neutral or even negative. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just what happens when different policy areas don't coordinate. Housing policy runs separately from tax policy, and individuals like you get caught in the gap. The downsizing trap isn't theoretical. It's happening right now to millions of people who are watching property tax speculation and quietly putting their retirement plans on hold. If you're one of them, you're not being irrational, but you are being affected by something that's only partially within your control. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you planning to downsize? Are you waiting for clarity on council tax reform? Or are you moving forward regardless? Have recent proposals changed your thinking about retirement housing? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Retirement Brief UK for more essential updates on the UK retirement landscape. We cover everything from changes to the property market, summarising news on legislation changes and market trends to practical advice for homeowners and investors. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an update that could affect your retirement planning decisions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.